Primitive, austere, and beautiful, the long finger of land known as Baja, California, has beckoned to adventurers for the past 450 years. It's a cruel environment that has offered both reward and challenge to men down through the years. And for today's civilized, city-bred man, the challenge of the land has become an end in itself. The reward is in conquering it. This civilized environment can be just as harsh and as dangerous as the Baja. The threat here is not to life itself, but to the quality of life. And the young are the most vulnerable to this threat. Our story is about a handful of boys who were in danger of getting lost here, until a unique organization brought them together and set them on the road to manhood, on a journey through the Baja wilderness, a journey that for each of them began in a barber shop. They had to raise $2,000 for the trip, and their new trim image helped them get the cooperation of service clubs and merchants.
Well, this is the check, boys, that we'd like to present to you from the Northeast San Fernando Rotary Club.
And there were pancake sales with their mothers cooking and the boys serving. They scoured the community for contributions to rummage sales, and they applied their own muscle at events like this $1 car wash. These youngsters were brought together, shown a goal they wanted to reach, and shown how to reach it. The goal behind shaping themselves up and raising the money was a chance to meet the challenge of Baja. Jawbone Canyon in California's Mojave Desert. This was a warm-up, a practice run over the toughest terrain they could find. These excursions were to teach the boys safe riding techniques and give them confidence in their skills. Black, white, Chicano, and Asian, they'd been brought together through an idea called NYPUM, the National Youth Project using minibikes. Sponsored by the YMCA, it's available to any qualified youth organization that wants it. These boys were from a YMCA branch, a Los Angeles City outreach project, a San Fernando Valley Boys Club, and a community-based organization called Casa Maravilla in the barrio of East Los Angeles. There are 7,300 boys in NYPUM groups around the country, but none had ever before undertaken anything like the Baja Run. So a lot of parents had to be sold on the idea first.
It's the actual Baja 1000 that's done every year by professional racers. Naturally, we won't be racing. We'll be traveling at a casual pace. And
okay, Jan, you keep saying the same thing. Where are you going to start? The name of the place where you're going to start riding the bikes?
Right. We're going to start the actual ride at this point, at the Tijuana border. We plan to travel from Tijuana across the Mexican border and then attempt the actual Baja 1000, which stretches from Baja.
Before reaching the border, they decided to expand the trip to 1,200 miles, going south from Tijuana, east across the mountains to San Felipe, south to La Paz, and then southwest to the very end of Baja, to Cabo San Lucas. At the border, amidst the flurry of signing visas and getting insurance for the bikes and vans, there was time to check with Mexican officials regarding their final plans and the route they had picked for the 1,200-mile journey. The officials approved heartily. They even gave the expedition a police escort through the busy center of Tijuana. But this was just a prelude. The real journey would begin where the paved road ended, at El Condor. This was where all the practice and training, the skills from first aid to mechanics, were to pay off. This was what all the work and the fundraising had been leading to, the first step of their longest journey. Boys ages 12 to 16 and 9 adult leaders on minibikes, a Jeep, and 2 vans, with what they hoped would be enough food, water, and equipment in reserve to meet any emergency. No one knew what would be needed. No one had ever tried minibiking 1,200 miles through Baja. This was a first. In the upper Baja, the easier, more populated part of the peninsula, the mood was almost cocky. Everyone was fresh and the machines were purring smoothly, and there was time to enjoy the scenery, climbing gradually off the desert and up through the foothills into the towering Sierra de Juarez. It was more than an adventure. It was a way of stretching self-esteem, a stern test of self-discipline, a method of uniting youngsters with a single purpose, bringing them closer to each other and to their adult leaders. The lessons here in this elemental country were clearer than in the city. Here the grading was cruelly simple. For instance, the boys were told gasoline and water were precious, and that to waste either was to fail. In Baja, where temperatures can reach 130 degrees, such a failure could be fatal. Each boy started the day with 2 quarts of water in his canteen. The gasoline reserve was carried in the vans, which were often separated from the bikes. By the time they crossed the Upper Peninsula, they knew the value of all the work and training that had gone before. They were taking on the look of veterans, past their first skirmish and a little tattered at the edges, but knowing that the big battles still lay ahead. To escape the extreme heat of high day in the desert and yet stay on schedule, they had to ride at night. On this night, they rode until past midnight, eager to reach the east coast of Baja and the warm Sea of Cortez. Next morning, the rigors of the day and night before were cast off, along with their clothes, as they frolicked off the beach at San Felipe. South of San Felipe, the going got progressively rougher. The road became indistinguishable from the surrounding engulfing desert, and the choking dust filled every pore. Hidden rocks ripped tires open, claimed wheel rims, even the front forks on one bike. There was talk of going back, but no one wanted to be the first to quit. There were pauses along the way, cold drinks and time to shake off dust and fatigue. It doesn't take much for boys between 12 and 16 to bounce back. The rest and repair stops gave them time to get to know each other a little better, to talk about the problems of the ride, concrete problems they could deal with. It gave them a sense of shared pride that they could deal with them. The kids didn't know it, but this pride in self was just what had appealed to leaders like John Doral, a Los Angeles city youth worker. The idea for the Baja 1200 had come from John Gonzales of Casa Maravilla. He and Doral had brought the idea to life. They were showing more regard for themselves and for each other. They were becoming a team. They were learning to depend on each other and to share things, fun, water, and gasoline, their food, and even the work that went into preparing it. They formed 4 work crews, one for fueling and maintaining the bikes, and others for cooking, cleanup, and loading and unloading equipment from the vans. They were no longer a mixture of adults and children, but a team. They seemed to ride taller and stronger as they neared the 1,000-mile mark, moving in smooth formation over the wavy ribbon of road leading into La Paz, bikes in single file, each 10 paces behind the one ahead. The seawall curving into La Paz, a corridor of Cantu palms and India trees, contrasted sharply with the rugged testing ground they had left behind. La Paz was not only the last major city on their trek down the peninsula, it was the first where they would be received with official honors. They carried greetings from a sister city in California, Redondo Beach, and the treasurer of La Paz was on the steps of the Palacio Municipal to greet them and bid them welcome.
Muy buena suerte y feliz viaje hasta Cabo San Lucas. Adiós. Buena suerte.
On the first day after the border crossing, and on the second, third, and fourth days, there had been talk of going home, cutting the journey short. Now on the 9th day, on the last leg of the trip that had never been made before, there was more talk of home, more thoughts of loved ones, parents, brothers and sisters, and friends in the neighborhood. But now the talk was of going home after the journey was completed. There was no thought of quitting, only of finishing. On this last night of the long ride, it seemed to have only just begun. Maybe because the farmers waving to them as they passed were a reminder of the parade through Tijuana. But now they were on their way southwest toward the bony tip of land that lay just under the setting sun, Cabo San Lucas. On this night, the campfire blazed, but there was silence around it. It was not just fatigue, although the riders were tired. It was pride. Not the boisterous show-off pride of boys, but the quiet pride of men, tinged with a little sadness. This was it, the last leg, a smooth, fast track sweeping under the line of minibikes at the 30-mile-an-hour clip. There was none of the jockeying for position, the passing of the man ahead that had marred the early sessions on the minibikes, when the thrill of riding was what counted. They had grown more considerate and more responsible with each passing mile of the journey. And their self-esteem had risen to the point where they didn't need to show off, even when the rocky coast of Cabo San Lucas loomed into view. This venture would prove a boost to the program and the men who designed it, providing a model for future challenging projects. There would be prayers of thanksgiving later this night, and in the days that followed. Prayers from the leaders, the boys and their parents back home. But right now, there was room only for jubilation. They had won a big victory over the Baja and over themselves. There was one thought: we made it. Not I made it, but we made it. The journey is over. Now we are men.